I have a date tonight. 6 simple words that made one of the most powerful men in the city pause for the first time in years. Vincent Callahan was a man who was used to hearing people wait for his decisions. As the head of a powerful organization, he controlled meetings, schedules, and every important detail around him. People carefully chose their words when they spoke to him because they knew his time was valuable. But that evening, inside the quiet halls of his private estate, one unexpected sentence from his maid left him completely surprised. Olivia Carter had worked in the Callahan household long enough to understand the rhythm of his life. She knew Vincent preferred silence during breakfast. She knew he liked everything organized, and she knew he rarely showed emotion. To most people, Vincent was simply the cold and untouchable mafia boss who always appeared to have everything under control. But Olivia saw something others missed. She saw a man who spent most of his life carrying responsibilities alone. She saw someone who rarely allowed himself to relax or enjoy simple moments. That was why Olivia never treated him differently because of his reputation. She did her work with patience, spoke with honesty, and never tried to impress him. Vincent noticed that about her, even though he never admitted it. Most people around him wanted something. They wanted opportunities, approval, or a connection to his influence. Olivia wanted nothing from him except basic respect. That was exactly what made her different. On that particular evening, Vincent was reviewing some documents in his office when Olivia quietly informed him that she would be leaving a little earlier than usual. He barely looked up at first, expecting another ordinary explanation. Then she added, "I have a date tonight." For a moment, Vincent stopped reading. The words seemed simple, but something about them caught his attention. He looked at Olivia with a level of curiosity he did not expect. "A date?" he asked, almost as if the idea was unfamiliar. Olivia smiled and explained that she had plans outside the estate and would return later. She did not say it to make him curious. She did not say it to gain a reaction. She simply shared information about her own life. And somehow, that bothered him more than he wanted to understand. Vincent had never considered Olivia's world outside the walls of his home. He knew her as the person who prepared his meals, organized the rooms, and quietly helped keep everything running smoothly. But now, for the first time, he imagined her laughing with someone else, sharing stories with someone else, and creating memories that had nothing to do with him. The thought felt strangely uncomfortable. He immediately questioned why he cared. Olivia was an employee. She was someone who worked in his home. There was no reason for him to feel anything about her personal plans. Yet, as she walked away, Vincent found himself watching the clock more often than usual. For the first time, the man who could control an entire empire realized there was something he could not control at all: his own feelings. The next morning, Vincent Callahan expected everything to return to normal. He believed the strange feeling from the previous evening would disappear once he focused on his usual responsibilities. After all, he had faced countless difficult situations without allowing emotions to distract him. But as he sat in his office reviewing his schedule, he found himself remembering something surprisingly simple. Olivia Carter had a life outside the Callahan estate. She had friends, plans, and moments that existed completely separate from him. For some reason, that realization stayed in his mind. Vincent had always believed he understood the people around him. He knew their roles, their responsibilities, and what they expected from him. But Olivia was different because she never tried to become important in his world. She simply lived her own life while doing her job with dedication and kindness. That morning, when Olivia entered the office to deliver some documents, Vincent found himself paying closer attention to the small details he had ignored before. He noticed the confidence in the way she spoke, the calm expression she carried, and the fact that she seemed completely unaffected by his sudden interest. Most people became nervous when they had his attention. Olivia did not. She treated him exactly the same as always. That only made him more curious. Vincent asked her about her evening, trying to sound casual. Olivia smiled and told him that she had enjoyed herself. She talked about the restaurant, the conversation, and how refreshing it was to spend time away from work. Vincent listened carefully, even though he tried not to show it. He was surprised by how much he wanted to know about a part of her life he had never considered before. Olivia noticed his curiosity, but did not make a big deal out of it. She simply answered his questions naturally. She never teased him or tried to make him jealous. That was another thing that made her different. She was not looking for attention. She already knew her own worth. Throughout the day, Vincent found himself thinking about why Olivia's independence affected him so much. He had met many people who wanted to be close to him because of his position. He had seen people change their behavior when they were around someone powerful. But Olivia never changed. She respected him, but she was not intimidated by him. She spoke to him as if he was simply another person. That was something Vincent had rarely experienced. Later that afternoon, Vincent saw Olivia helping another employee at the estate. She was patient, encouraging, and genuinely interested in making someone else's day easier. He realized that her kindness was not something she displayed only around him. It was simply part of who she was. For years, Vincent had surrounded himself with people who admired strength and success. Olivia reminded him that there were qualities far more meaningful than power. As evening approached, Vincent found himself looking toward the entrance of the estate, almost expecting Olivia to mention another plan or another part of her life he knew nothing about. The thought surprised him. He had spent years believing that needing anyone was a weakness. But now, the woman who never asked for his attention had become the person he wanted to understand the most. And Vincent Callahan was beginning to realize that his curiosity about Olivia Carter was becoming something much deeper than he wanted to admit. Over the following days, Vincent Callahan found himself facing a situation he never expected. The woman who had always moved quietly through his home had somehow become the person who captured his attention the most. He tried to convince himself that it was nothing more than curiosity. Olivia Carter was simply someone different from the people he usually encountered. She was honest, calm, and completely unaffected by his reputation. But the more Vincent observed her, the more he realized there was something about her that he respected. Olivia never treated his position as something impressive. She never acted nervous just because he was the mafia boss. She did her work, spoke with confidence, and continued living her life without waiting for his approval. That independence was something Vincent had never experienced before. One afternoon, Vincent returned to the estate earlier than expected. He found Olivia organizing a small collection of flowers in the main room. It was a simple task, but the care she put into it caught his attention. She noticed him and greeted him normally, without the hesitation most people showed around him. Vincent asked why she always seemed so positive despite having a demanding schedule. Olivia smiled and explained that she believed every person had the ability to create small moments of happiness. She did not wait for perfect circumstances because she knew life was never perfect. Vincent listened quietly. Her answer stayed with him because it was completely different from how he viewed the world. For years, he believed happiness came after achieving certain goals. He believed people could finally relax once everything was under control. Olivia showed him that peace could exist even when life was unpredictable. Their conversation continued longer than either of them expected. Vincent found himself asking questions about her interests, her dreams, and the things that mattered to her. Olivia talked about wanting a future where she could help others and continue growing as a person. She never mentioned wealth or status. She never focused on what she could gain. She focused on what she could contribute. That surprised Vincent. He had spent years surrounded by people who measured success through influence and recognition. Olivia measured it through kindness and personal growth. Later that evening, Vincent sat alone in his office thinking about their conversation. He realized something uncomfortable. He was not simply curious about Olivia anymore. He was interested in her thoughts, her opinions, and the way she saw the world. He wanted to know more about the person behind the quiet smile. At the same time, Olivia noticed that Vincent was slowly changing. The man who once kept conversations short was beginning to open up. He listened more. He asked questions. He allowed moments of silence without immediately filling them with business discussions. She did not try to force this change. She simply gave him the space to be himself. Neither of them realized how important these small moments would become. Vincent had always believed emotions were something that made people vulnerable. But Olivia was showing him that understanding someone did not weaken him. It gave him a reason to look beyond the walls he had built around himself. And for the first time in a long time, Vincent Callahan began wondering what it would feel like to have someone in his life who stayed because they wanted to, not because they had to. Vincent Callahan had always believed that emotions were something he could organize, control, and place aside whenever necessary. His entire life had been built around discipline and careful decisions. But recently, one person had quietly changed the way he viewed the world around him. Olivia Carter was not trying to change him. She was not asking for anything from him. She simply existed as herself, and somehow that was enough to make Vincent question things he had ignored for years. As the days passed, Vincent began noticing how much Olivia contributed to the atmosphere of the estate. She remembered small details about everyone who worked there. She greeted people with genuine kindness. She created a sense of warmth in a place that had always felt too formal and distant. Vincent realized that before Olivia came into his life, he had mistaken silence for peace. He had created an environment where everything was organized, but nothing truly felt personal. One morning, Vincent found Olivia preparing breakfast in the kitchen. He noticed she looked thoughtful, and he asked if something was on her mind. Olivia admitted that she had been considering taking a class in the evenings to improve her skills and explore a personal interest she had always wanted to pursue. Vincent was surprised, not because of the idea itself, but because he realized he knew almost nothing about her dreams. He had spent so much time seeing Olivia as part of the routine of his household that he had forgotten she was a person with ambitions of her own. He asked why she had never mentioned it before. Olivia smiled and explained that she never wanted people to assume her life existed only around her work. She believed everyone deserved the chance to grow and create something meaningful for themselves. Her answer stayed with Vincent. He understood that Olivia was not waiting for someone powerful to give her a better life. She was already building one herself. That was something he admired. Later that day, Vincent found himself looking through his schedule and making an unexpected adjustment. He wanted to understand more about Olivia's interests, but he also knew he had to be careful. He did not want his position to make her feel obligated to share anything with him. For the first time, Vincent was considering how his actions affected someone else's freedom. Olivia noticed this change. She noticed that Vincent was becoming more thoughtful, more patient, and more willing to listen. The man who once seemed impossible to reach was slowly revealing a different side of himself, a side that was curious, considerate, and capable of caring deeply. However, Vincent still struggled with one question. Why did Olivia matter so much to him? He had known many people throughout his life. He had met individuals with wealth, influence, and impressive backgrounds. Yet none of them had made him feel the way Olivia did. She brought calm into his life without demanding anything in return. That evening, Vincent stood by the large windows of his office, looking out over the estate. He thought about how different everything felt now. The world around him had not changed. His responsibilities remained the same, but his perspective had shifted. Olivia Carter had entered his life quietly, and without realizing it, she had become the one person who made him want to become more than the man everyone else expected him to be. The days that followed brought a change that even Vincent Callahan could not ignore. He had always been a man who followed a clear routine. Every morning began with meetings, decisions, and responsibilities that reminded him of the role he carried. But recently, his attention had started shifting toward moments that had nothing to do with business. A simple conversation with Olivia Carter could stay in his thoughts long after it ended. A small smile from her could change the atmosphere of an entire day. Vincent found this unfamiliar, and that made him more curious than anything else. He had spent years believing that emotions were distractions. Now he was beginning to understand that some emotions revealed things a person needed to see. Olivia continued living her life in her own way. She never acted differently, because Vincent was paying more attention. She still arrived each morning with the same calm attitude, still helped everyone around the estate, and still treated Vincent with the same respectful honesty she always had. That was what made her impossible for him to ignore. She did not change because of his status. She did not try to impress him. She simply allowed him to see who she truly was. One afternoon, Vincent noticed Olivia preparing to leave after finishing her responsibilities. He asked if she had plans, and she mentioned that she would be meeting a friend for coffee. The answer was simple, but once again, Vincent felt that strange reaction he could not explain. He realized he was becoming interested in the parts of Olivia's life that existed away from him. He wanted to know what made her laugh, what inspired her, and what dreams she carried. Later that day, Vincent spoke with one of his advisors, who noticed that he seemed distracted. Vincent avoided the subject at first, but eventually admitted that he had been thinking about someone who had changed his perspective. His advisor was surprised because Vincent had always been known as someone who kept personal feelings separate from his responsibilities. Vincent explained that Olivia was different. She reminded him that life was not only about control and achievement. She reminded him that people could find meaning in simple moments. Meanwhile, Olivia began noticing that Vincent was no longer the distant man she first met. He listened more carefully when she spoke. He asked about her opinions instead of simply giving instructions. He seemed genuinely interested in understanding her thoughts. Olivia appreciated the change, but she also remained careful. She knew Vincent lived in a world very different from hers, and she wanted any connection between them to be based on honesty rather than obligation. That evening, Vincent found himself thinking about something Olivia had said earlier. She had mentioned that the best relationships were built when two people could be themselves without fear of judgment. Those words stayed with him because he realized he had rarely experienced that kind of connection. Many people respected his position, but very few people saw beyond it. Olivia did. She saw the person behind the reputation. She saw the man who sometimes felt alone despite having everything others believed he needed. For the first time in years, Vincent wondered if the life he built around control had prevented him from experiencing something more meaningful. And as Olivia continued to become a bigger part of his world, Vincent knew one thing was certain. The woman who never asked for his attention had become the one person he wanted to understand completely. Vincent Callahan had spent years building a life where every decision had a purpose. He knew how to manage responsibilities, how to handle expectations, and how to remain calm in situations where others would struggle. But lately, he had discovered something far more difficult to understand. He was learning how to accept feelings he could not simply organize or dismiss. Olivia Carter had become a quiet presence in his life, yet her influence continued to grow with every passing day. She never demanded his attention, but somehow she always had it. One morning, Vincent noticed Olivia preparing for her usual routine, but there was something different about her expression. She seemed excited about something outside the estate. When he asked, she mentioned that she had plans to attend a community event during her free time. She explained that she enjoyed spending time with people who shared similar interests and that it gave her a chance to learn something new. Vincent listened carefully. In the past, he might have considered such things unimportant compared to his own responsibilities. But now, he found himself appreciating the passion behind her words. Olivia had a way of finding meaning in ordinary moments, and Vincent admired that quality more than he expected. Later that afternoon, Vincent watched from a distance as Olivia helped prepare supplies for the event. He saw how naturally people responded to her kindness. She did not need authority to earn respect. She did not need wealth to make an impact. She simply cared about people, and that sincerity created a connection wherever she went. For someone who had spent most of his life surrounded by people interested in his power, seeing Olivia interact with others reminded Vincent how rare genuine kindness had become in his world. That evening, Vincent found himself reflecting on his own choices. He realized that he had spent years protecting himself from disappointment by keeping everyone at a distance. He believed that if he never depended on anyone, he could never be hurt. But Olivia challenged that belief without even trying. She showed him that trust was not a weakness. It was a choice that required courage. Meanwhile, Olivia also noticed the changes in Vincent. The man who once seemed impossible to reach had become more open and thoughtful. He started asking about her day, remembering details she mentioned, and showing appreciation for things he once overlooked. She understood that these changes were meaningful because they were not forced. Vincent was changing because he wanted to understand another person, not because someone demanded it from him. One evening they shared a quiet conversation in the garden. Vincent admitted that he did not always know how to express what he felt. He explained that his entire life had been focused on being strong for others, leaving little room to think about what he needed himself. Olivia told him that everyone deserved moments where they could simply be human. She reminded him that strength was not about carrying everything alone. It was also about allowing yourself to connect with others. Vincent listened to her words and realized how much her perspective had changed him. The woman he once saw as a simple part of his household had become someone whose opinion mattered deeply. He did not know exactly when it happened, but Olivia Carter had become the person who made him question the walls he had built around his heart. And for the first time in many years, Vincent was not afraid of what he might discover beyond those walls. For the first time in years, Vincent Callahan found himself looking forward to moments that had nothing to do with business or responsibility. He still managed his organization with the same focus and discipline, but his thoughts often returned to the simple conversations he shared with Olivia Carter. He had become accustomed to her presence in his life, and that realization surprised him more than anything else. Vincent had always believed that needing someone was a risk, yet Olivia had shown him that allowing someone close could bring a sense of peace he never knew he was missing. One afternoon, Vincent noticed Olivia preparing to leave the estate earlier than usual. She explained that she was meeting a friend for dinner and wanted to spend some time outside before returning home. Her words were completely normal, but Vincent felt that familiar feeling he had tried to ignore. A quiet discomfort appeared inside him, and he immediately recognized it as something unfamiliar. He was not upset with Olivia. He was not questioning her choices. He simply realized that the idea of her sharing her time and attention with someone else affected him more than he expected. Vincent spent the rest of the afternoon trying to understand why. He had known many people throughout his life, but very few had ever made him feel this way. Olivia was not someone who depended on his influence or looked at him differently because of his reputation. She had her own goals, her own interests, and her own world. That independence was exactly what made him admire her. Meanwhile, Olivia noticed that Vincent seemed quieter than usual. She did not know what was on his mind, but she recognized that he was thinking deeply about something. She had learned that Vincent was not a person who easily expressed his emotions. Instead of asking questions he was not ready to answer, she simply continued treating him with the same patience and respect she always had. That evening, Vincent realized something important. The feeling he had been trying to understand was not about control. It was about caring. For most of his life, he had been surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Olivia was different because she never asked him for anything beyond honesty and respect. She made him feel valued not because of what he could provide, but because of who he was. The realization changed the way he saw their relationship. He no longer wanted to simply understand why she was different. He wanted to understand how he could become someone worthy of the trust she gave him. The next morning, Vincent approached Olivia with a more open attitude. He asked about her plans, her interests, and the things that made her happy. Olivia noticed the difference immediately. This was not the distant and untouchable man she first met. This was someone making an effort to connect. As they talked, Vincent realized that Olivia had become the one person who could make him forget the pressure surrounding him. She reminded him that life was not only about achievement and responsibility. It was also about the people who brought meaning to the journey. For the first time, Vincent Callahan accepted a truth he could no longer ignore. The woman who never tried to capture his attention had become the person he could not stop thinking about. The days after Vincent Callahan finally admitted his feelings to himself felt different, even though nothing around him had changed. The estate remained the same. His responsibilities continued, and the world still saw him as the powerful mafia boss who always knew what to do. But inside, Vincent had changed. He no longer viewed emotions as distractions. Instead, he began to see them as reminders that there was more to life than control and responsibility. Olivia Carter noticed the difference before anyone else did. She noticed how Vincent listened more carefully when she spoke, how he asked for her opinions, and how he seemed genuinely interested in the small details of her life. These were things she never expected from a man who had always appeared so distant. One evening, Vincent and Olivia shared a conversation in the garden. The quiet atmosphere gave them a chance to speak without the usual expectations surrounding them. Vincent admitted that he had spent most of his life believing people respected him because of his position. He had built walls around himself because he thought showing uncertainty would make him appear weak. Olivia listened carefully and told him that being honest about emotions did not take away from his strength. She explained that everyone needed moments where they could simply be understood. Her words stayed with Vincent because they reflected something he had slowly begun to realize. Olivia never tried to change him into someone else. She only encouraged him to see the parts of himself he had ignored. At the same time, Olivia shared more about her own journey. She explained that she had spent years proving that her background did not determine her future. Many people had underestimated her because of her position, but she learned that her worth came from within. Vincent respected that more than she knew. He admired the confidence she had built without needing approval from anyone else. Their connection grew stronger because they both understood what it felt like to be judged by appearances. Vincent had been viewed only as a powerful figure, while Olivia had often been viewed only by her job. Together, they discovered the comfort of being seen for who they truly were. However, Vincent also understood that their worlds were different. He did not want Olivia to feel pressured because of his influence or reputation. He wanted her to choose her own path freely. That realization showed how much he had changed. The man who once believed everything could be controlled was learning that genuine connections required trust. Olivia appreciated that side of him. She saw that beneath the confident image was someone who was trying to become better. Later that night, Vincent stood in his office and reflected on everything that had happened. He remembered when Olivia first entered his life as someone he barely noticed beyond her daily responsibilities. Now, she was the person whose thoughts mattered most to him. He realized the biggest change was not that Olivia had entered his world. It was that she had helped him open a part of himself he had kept hidden for years. And as their bond continued to grow, Vincent knew he no longer wanted to simply have Olivia nearby. He wanted to be someone who deserved to stand beside her. Months had passed since Vincent Callahan realized that the person who changed his life was the woman who never asked for anything from him. The estate was still filled with the same routines, the same responsibilities, and the same expectations from the outside world. But inside those walls, everything felt different. Vincent was no longer the man who believed that being powerful meant standing alone. He had learned that true strength also came from trust, understanding, and the courage to allow someone to see the person behind the reputation. Olivia Carter had become the most important part of that transformation. She never tried to take away his identity or change the person he was. Instead, she reminded him that he could be successful while still allowing himself to experience happiness. Vincent continued to carry his responsibilities as a mafia boss, but he approached life with a different perspective. He listened more, valued the people around him, and understood that respect was earned through actions rather than fear or status. Olivia noticed that the man she once thought was impossible to reach had become someone who genuinely cared about the world around him. One evening, Vincent invited Olivia to walk through the garden where they had shared many conversations. The place had become meaningful because it represented the moments when they both felt comfortable enough to be honest. Vincent told her that when she first arrived at the estate, he never expected her presence to affect him so deeply. He had believed his life was complete because he had achieved everything people admired. But Olivia helped him realize that success without connection could still feel empty. Olivia smiled and told him that she never saw him as someone who needed to be changed. She saw him as someone who had forgotten that he was allowed to be human. Those words meant more to Vincent than she realized. For years, he had focused on being the person everyone expected him to be. With Olivia, he finally felt free to simply be himself. Their relationship was not built on power, wealth, or appearances. It was built on the small moments that showed who they truly were. It was built on conversations, trust, and the choice to understand each other. People around them eventually noticed the difference. They saw that Olivia was not important to Vincent because of her role in the household. She was important because she brought balance into his life. She reminded him of kindness, patience, and the simple joys he had forgotten. They also saw that Vincent was not simply offering Olivia a different world. He was learning from her as much as she learned from him. Together, they proved that two people from different backgrounds could find common ground when they looked beyond appearances. Vincent once believed that having control over everything was the key to a meaningful life. Olivia showed him that the greatest moments often came from the things he could not plan. A simple conversation, an unexpected connection, and a person who saw him for who he truly was changed everything. Olivia Carter never tried to become the center of Vincent Callahan's world. She simply became the person who reminded him that his world could be bigger than he ever imagined. And Vincent finally understood that the most valuable thing he had discovered was not another achievement or another victory. It was the rare gift of finding someone who chose to stay. Because they saw his heart, not just his name.